Welcome to the Unimaginary Friendcast. This is our 233rd episode, which means we've been doing this for 233 weeks. And no global pandemic can tear us apart. This is week 6 of the COVID-19 quarantine here in Los Angeles, where we record. Since we can't be together, we can at least see each other through this beautiful computer screen. Allow me to introduce your socially distanced hosts.
I am Nathan Von Edvinson.
I'm Erin Marie Betty Davis Jr. at your service.
And as always, I'm DavidMonster.com.
Thank you, David.
You're welcome.
All right, today we have the interview to end all interviews. You all out there are Base of Super fans. You all know that we've been on a quest to explore all the different angles of this pandemic through conversations with experts. And our goal is to arm ourselves and arm you all with as much knowledge as possible so we come out of this in one piece, correct? And for all of you tuning in for the first time, welcome. We're very happy to have you. And I just want to bring you up to speed real quick. So since the quarantine started, we've interviewed a data analyst, a professional life coach, a licensed clinical psychologist, and we've discussed everything from the mathematical side to the spiritual side to the mental health side. And you can watch all of these interviews on our YouTube or Facebook page, or you can listen on iTunes. Everything's available to you. Today, we're going to take a different angle. We're going to go the political angle. And who better to discuss this with than someone who is deep in the trenches of Washington? That's right. So today, we are incredibly honored to have Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal calling in shortly. She is currently serving her second term representing Washington's 7th District. And just a fun fact, she is the first South Asian American woman ever elected to the U.S. House of Representatives. So we're really, really lucky to be able to pick her brain today. But first,
We're interrupting this program with breaking news, bitch.
so my news this week is I finally publicly released my online photography store. Erin Marie Photography is finally online. So you can buy my photographs with anything, like as a tote bag, you can frame it, you can get a shower curtain, you can literally get my photos printed on anything, but now they have actual face masks for the pandemic.
Really?
Yeah. So you can
Wow.
you can scroll through my whole collection, choose a photo you love, and they'll print it on a face mask, ship it to you.
Why don't we have those?
I don't even have one yet.
Yeah.
We need to order some.
Your photographs on a shower curtain would be beautiful. They're so landscapical. Is that the correct term, landscapical?
I think
believe
that's
so.
right. You can pretty much print the photos on any household item, so everyone's dream come true. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, plus I add new images every single week. So definitely check it out if you can.
If you got an Erin Marie Betty Davis Jr. shower curtain or like blanket, it would like change the room actually.
It would. That's true.
It's very exciting. That's my news.
That's good. I have good news.
What's up?
So
You do?
yes, I do, David. We had recently we had the digital re-release of our travel show, Total Trip Domination. It's 7 episodes.
Yes.
You can watch it for free on our website, unimaginaryfriend.com/Total Trip Domination of some. You'll find the link in there.
you'll
Just
find
go to
it.
our website. But we really enjoyed making it and hope you enjoy it. So take a look.
Nice. David, what's your news this week? What do you got? How you
Well,
doing?
since you guys are plugging, I'm going to plug DavidMonster.com,
Nice.
which is always a wonderland. But more important
Wait,
than
your
that,
name.
you guys,
You just plugged your name.
just go to DavidMonster.com and your whole life will be complete.
Huh.
But more than that, I don't even know if you guys know this, but I scored big time this week.
What happened?
Okay, you know the Robotards are
Yeah.
the biggest thing in the world right now, right?
Of course.
Yeah.
Well, I took meetings with them privately. They only wanted to see me for some reason. I don't know why.
Rub it in.
They're coming back as our sponsors.
What?
Yes.
That must be why they sent us this brand new poster.
Oh, wow. Look at that.
Look at they're just winning. They're snatching trophies all over the world. Look at that, like all those laurels.
Well, thank you so much for securing that sponsor again. We've been really missing them since they dumped us.
In the meeting, they explained to me they didn't dump us. It's just that there's so much demand coming at them so fast.
It's hard to keep up with the contracts as they expire.
Yeah. They're
Well,
snatching trophies and signing checks. Yeah, totally.
I guess we should.
Or cashing checks. Sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I guess we should take a second and hear from our sponsors.
A Robotards! Finally, fitness has a brain.
It's not good enough to just be healthy. If you don't look good, they'll never know.
You can't be as good as we can be, but you can be the best that you can be.
Aerobitards is a scientifically proven and designed method of living your life at a level never before seen on this planet.
This is the Aerobitard way. Man, it is good to have them back. That feels so good. Wow. Thank you, Aerobitards. Your support means the world.
And this week's Gold Star goes to
Dr. Anthony Fauci. Congratulations on your Gold Star. It's very well earned. But this week there's a specific reason. David, do you want to explain? And I have a quote that will back up what you're about to say.
He said, let's stop shaking hands. It's an outdated custom that only spreads germs. No more shaking hands unless it's with yourself.
His exact quote is, I don't think we should ever shake hands again, to be honest with you. We've got to break that custom. And anyone who's been watching the show knows that David and I have been a big fan of that for years before any of this happened. So we're not big handshakers.
I'm 425% behind him.
That's a lot.
That is a lot. Let's do a quick intro of Pramila Jayapal so that when she calls, we'll be ready. Because we only have a short period of time with her because she's really busy, and I'm really grateful she's even given us this time. Congresswoman Pramila Jayapal is a member of the House Judiciary Committee and serves as Vice Chair of the Immigration Subcommittee and on the House Education, Labor, and Budget Committees. She has been a leader on immigration, inequality reform, healthcare, higher education reform. That's just the tip of the iceberg, people. She was born in India and came to the U.S. by herself at 16 years old to attend Georgetown University. She later received her MBA from Northwestern and published her first book in 2000. You have all seen Pramila. She's been plastered all over the news. She's been on Real Time with Bill Maher and often alongside Bernie Sanders throughout his presidential campaign. So we are so, so honored to have her joining us today.
She's a Bernie bro. All right.
I think Pramila Jayapal is coming into the meeting.
Like
Let's admit her.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, how are you guys?
Good. How are you?
Fun.
It's great to see
Wow,
you.
thank you for coming. This is exciting.
The first question I have for you, and this is what we've been asking all of our guests since this lockdown started, is just how are you? How are things going personally? And even what's going on with work? Is the government still operating in a social distance? How are things?
Well, I'm fine. Thank you for asking that. My family's well. You know, in the grand scheme of things, we are fortunate and blessed. Unlike a lot of people across this country, in 4 days or less, we will have lost more American lives than we did in the Vietnam War. And so I wake up every morning and I think about that. In my district in particular, because I represent Seattle and surrounding areas, we were hit first and hardest, you know, in the early days. So our first case was diagnosed on January 21st. So my constituents, some of them have been without paychecks now going on 3 months. And it's really very stressful. We have a lot of businesses that have shuttered. The relief that we've passed is good. I'm glad we've done what we've done, but it's just not sufficient. And it isn't bold enough. It isn't to the scale of the crisis of 27 million Americans having declared unemployment, filed for unemployment in the last 6 weeks alone. We're pretty soon going to be at Depression era levels of unemployment. And it just requires us to do better. So yeah, the government is functioning, of course, but we don't have proxy voting in place, which means that we don't have a lot of the normal tools of hearings, of using different procedures on the floor to make something better. We don't have the ways that we traditionally would of lifting up subjects that are more controversial. Pretty much everything that moves forward has to be moving in a very bipartisan way, which makes it challenging to be as bold as we need to, or to lift up issues that are tough, like the people who are in jails and prisons and detention centers, or immigrants who are picking food to put on our tables and in our food pantry, in our food banks, but don't get any relief at all because of their citizenship status. So things like that have been tough. But we're trying to move forward. We're trying to do as much as we can. And I think it just calls on us to be more bold, bigger, think outside of the box, and really figure out how we respond to something where every single state in the union has declared an emergency. That's never really happened before. And so our systems just aren't set up to deal with that.
Yeah. So, gosh, hearing about we're near Depression era levels you probably have a better sense of that than the normal person does, of where that lies and where we're along that track. And obviously the government's done a lot. But how would you rate their response at this point? If you were to give them a grade like a school marm, what kind of rating would you give them?
Them is me also.
Yeah,
and
that's right.
I think we're talking federal government.
I would not, I'd say on the Trump administration, I don't give a high rating at all. The Trump administration should be leading in a whole different way. They should be demanding that industry here manufacture things like test kits and swabs for the testing and PPE. That's called the Defense Production Act, and Trump has not done that. They should be coordinating a full-fledged response to making sure that we have testing and contact tracing and isolation set up if we're going to try to go back to work. There's so many things that just have not been done from the federal government standpoint, specifically the administration. In terms of Congress, I think, I would give us a passing grade, but nothing more than that. And even passing is a little challenging for me because we still don't have stimulus checks for most people in the district. Our small businesses have not gotten money. I think the PPP program that we've implemented were good ideas, but it's a flawed structure. It's structurally flawed in terms of getting money to businesses. And my belief is we should have a program like the Paycheck Guarantee Act that I've put forward that would stop mass unemployment. That's what we need to do. That's what most countries in Europe and around the world have done. Mass unemployment is a policy choice, and we can choose differently. So that's what I hope that we in Congress do in our next package.
So that act, how would that, so the way we've done this is state by state where we've kind of shut down here and there. Should we have done or should we do like a total national lockdown, or should we do more of the Swedish approach where they've kind of left things running but protected the more vulnerable? Or one of those two approaches more appropriate? And how does your act guarantee employment? Is that just everyone's being paid like moving forward? Is that just what it is, but we're still locked down?
Yeah, so great questions. And I think that the key thing here is job number one is to beat the virus. And to beat the virus, you have to act aggressively in ways that feel too aggressive. If you wait until the virus is out there and then you say, okay, we're going to lock down, it's probably too late. And when you look at the fact that we've lost 54,000 lives already, I would say it's too late. But, Washington State was hit first, and we went hard into lockdown and restrictions, which I think was really good. If the federal government had at that moment, looking at what happened in Wuhan, China, and Italy and other places, said, we are doing a national shelter-in-place order, and ordered all states to do it, there would have been a lot of resistance, but I guarantee you we would have saved a lot of lives. At the same time, had they done the testing, because the thing with this virus is we've been wrong about just about everything on the virus. So we said that it only transmits, and we meaning, public health experts and scientists even, were saying, it only transmits symptomatically. You can only transmit if you're symptomatic. We now know that to not be true. It was said that you're only vulnerable if you're over 65. Now, it's true that fatality rates are much greater over 65, but hospitalization rates of people 50 and under are significantly higher than anyone ever expected. Now we're finding that people appear to be reinfected, where typically with a virus, you would have an immunity built and you wouldn't be able to get a second wave of infection. That is not necessarily true. So I think that we have to be really cautious about trying to rush back to work too quickly. And so if job number one, and this is where my act comes in, if job number one is to keep people at home so that we can beat the virus, then people are not going to stay at home and businesses are not going to stay shuttered if they don't have any money to put food on the table or pay their rent or their mortgage. And so we need to make sure that we're guaranteeing some sort of income for people, which, by the way, is economically good because it continues to stimulate consumer demand. It stops the economy from going into a downward spiral. And it allows workers to stay at home and put food on the table, pay their bills. It allows businesses to have something to get them through. And it also allows them to not feel like they have to rush back to work too quickly. So on every level, this is a smart investment. And it actually costs less, according to the estimates I've gotten from experts. It costs less than most of what we spent so far. And it would protect mass unemployment. And it would ensure that the economy can recover. So let's say a business can operate partially, right? You've got maybe a restaurant or something that does takeout. So maybe they're operating at 30% capacity, but they can't keep going with just 30% because they got a bunch of fixed costs. So my act would say, no, we're going to give you a maintenance cost of 25% on top of the payroll and benefits. And so you can just keep going and it'll be scaled. If you've got 70% revenue loss, you would get 70% of the grant money. And it would be a grant, not a loan, because nobody's going to take a loan right now when they don't know if whether in 4 months they're going to be around.
Yeah. David?
Well, I have a question for you. And Erin and Nathan have both asked me not to be myself in this interview because we obviously, and plus everything you're saying is so serious. Thank you for coming on and telling us this because we don't necessarily understand everything you said as citizens. But there is one thing we need to ask. You meet the people who are running our country. You've met Donald Trump and you've met Joe Biden.
Donald Trump.
Oh, you never met Donald Trump?
No, I've tried not to.
Oh, we were going to ask you.
I've been in the same room as Donald Trump when he delivers the State of the Union, but I have no interest in meeting Donald Trump.
Wow. Well, I think that
question.
might make it. We were going to ask you, is he for real? Because some of the things he says are so abhorrent, and the way he behaves in press releases and things is so ridiculous. Do you think he's for real?
I don't waste time thinking about, what his motivations are because I really don't understand how somebody could be so cruel, so egotistical, so xenophobic, so racist, so wrong, so factually incorrect and sit in the White House. I have ceased being shocked. I have ceased being disgusted. I'm disgusted by some of the things he says and some of the implications for the psyche of Americans across the country, working people who are just trying to make it and not getting any leadership or support from the guy that sits in the White House. But, what his motivations are, what he really believes, I have no idea. And that guy is not worth my time, honestly.
I have a quick.
It's an amazing answer.
Yeah, that is a good answer. How about Mitch McConnell? Have you met Mitch McConnell?
No, I get to see him in the hallways when we go and we express our displeasure with what the Senate is doing. But no, I haven't met him either. We don't. There's not that much interaction between the House and the Senate unless you're working with individual senators. So I have a lot of interaction with individual senators. Senator Booker and I just introduced a bill around detention facilities and releasing people from detention facilities. Senator Harris and I have introduced a domestic workers Bill of Rights together. Senator Sanders, of course, and I are very close. And there's many other senators I work with on a daily basis, but not Mitch McConnell, really.
Okay.
Well, just to let you know, we're horrified by him at this level. So just so you know. Honestly,
everyone should be. And I include in that people who have supported some of what they thought he was going to do. I hope they really look at what happens when a president, using the bully pulpit of the White House, tells people to ingest disinfectants. What happens when a president basically uses briefings that should be to provide factual information that networks won't even cover live. Most networks won't even cover live because they're so full of inaccuracies. What happens when you have a president who literally is willing to let people die. I think, I just think,
and then joke about it,
Exactly.
Yeah.
I just think everyone should be willing to question the guy at that point, because we are better than that, regardless of what side of the aisle you're on, regardless of whether you're a Democrat, an independent, or a Republican. We have core human values that are the same across our politics. And I hope that people just remember that and are willing to question what they thought about this guy.
I've kind of drifted away from some of his press briefings because it's just so hard to watch. But even initially, just seeing the lack of leadership, that's what surprised me the most, is that there was an opportunity to be a hero, really. Like, you could win over, if you did the right things, you could be a hero. And instead, he just pushed the responsibility completely away. And even if you're a supporter, I don't think that's the kind of leadership that demographic says they believe in. So that's just my
I think that's really smart. Most presidents during a crisis are able to unite the entire country behind them, because actually Americans generally want to be united. We don't want to be in this, back and forth of anger and whatever divisiveness. And so generally, crises like this call out the best in people, and they're willing to give the benefit of the doubt to whoever it was that they didn't trust before, as long as that person acts worthy of their trust and acts worthy of their, that benefit of the doubt. And so it is really remarkable that Trump has gone, has not seen any bump in the polling. The people that were with him before are probably with him before, but he's losing independents. He's even losing some older Republicans, because guess what? Those are the people that are dying from this virus. And so when he refuses to use his bully pulpit to actually lead in a time of crisis, it's very unusual that any president would, really tank that opportunity so adeptly. He's done that very well.
True.
There's my praise of Donald Trump. See, he's done something very well. He's tanked the approval of the country.
Thumbs up. How do you think COVID-19 will change our life moving forward, if you think it will, and in even the government and how the government operates? Do you think when this is all said and done, which is hopefully sooner than later, do you think we'll just kind of revert back to life as it was, or there'll be major shifts?
No, I really don't think so. Not for a long time. I think that this will fundamentally change the way we interact. I don't think travel is going to go back to the way it was. I don't think people are going to go into the crowded restaurants. I think that for quite some time, there will be physical distancing, both voluntary and sort of imposed. A restaurant might decide they're only going to allow a certain number of people in, or it may be that the government says, you can only allow a certain number of people in. I mean, I think those restrictions will stay. I don't think that consumer demand is going to go back. Buying behavior, if people just imagine, I mean, you guys have heard me talk about this before. Before COVID-19 hit, 60% of Americans did not even have $400 in their bank account for an emergency. So you add to that missing paychecks for a number of months. You add to that, debt burdens that are increasing. I mean, we're trying to do things to stop that from happening. You add to that credit scores that are going to be dramatically affected unless the credit companies fix that. And you're going to see that people do not have the money to do even what was there before. And so that's why I say, there are a lot of after effects of all of this. And even as we reopen, I looked at Trump's plan for reopening. And, in the first phase, he's got businesses reopening, some businesses reopening. Well, let's say that business requires, we are so interconnected. Let's say that business requires a part from Ohio, but Ohio hasn't actually been able to open yet. What happens then? The second part of the plan says childcare centers and schools would reopen partially in the second part of the plan. But in the first part of the plan, what happens to all the parents who are out there who are now being told to go back to work, but they don't have any childcare, their kids are at home? What happens to them, And so I think that there are just so many questions about what reopening looks like. And to your question, Erin, I think that's like the linchpin of all of this. We are not going to go back to normal. I don't know what normal was, but it wasn't good enough for me before. but even if we were thinking about some sort of stasis, behavior is going to change dramatically until we get this thing under control.
Yeah, that's a good point too. Do we want to go back to normal?
Yeah.
In some ways, yes, but normal isn't always great.
Some ways, no.
Yeah, exactly. I kind of think about it as maybe it's more like stasis, but in the midst of everything, we should really be thinking about how we fix some of the structural issues that have really been illuminated through this, right? I mean, we've shined a light on some of the deep structural problems of our country, including, by the way, why it is ludicrous to say that employer-covered healthcare offers you the most choice. Let me just put in a plug for Medicare for All.
Yes, please.
Ooh, yeah.
Because, I think you all heard me even on the Bill Maher show when I was on there, and I know Nathan and Erin, you get to come. People would say, oh, employer-covered healthcare offers so much choice. We have to keep choice of employer-covered healthcare. Well, here's the choice that I've been talking about. You lose your job, you lose your healthcare. So the 27 million Americans who have lost their jobs, a big majority of those have also lost their healthcare. So that's not the system we need. By the way, just to show how moderate and reasonable I am, even as a progressive, my Paycheck Guarantee Act would actually keep people on their employer-covered health care for now, because it would cover benefits and paychecks, because I think it's crazy to kick people off of their health care at this point. However,
at this time.
Exactly. But however, I have other proposals that would expand Medicare and Medicaid. That's really what we should be doing. But at a minimum, let's not punish people for the lack of courage that our government and Congress has shown in following for-profit insurance companies and sticking to this system. I'm feisty this morning.
Yeah, it's great.
Let it out.
So I have
You're perfect this morning.
I have one more question, and then we have two questions from listeners, and then we're going to hit you with a series of rapid questions, and that'll be where we're going. So just to give you a timeline there, but as an immigration rights activist, what are your thoughts on Trump's new immigration ban?
Ooh. She's rolling her eyes.
I'm sure you have a lot more to say about that than I could even ask.
So there's going to be some people that aren't watching; they're just listening. So I'm narrating that you're rolling your eyes right now.
Thanks for translating my head. It's just cruel. It's callous. I actually don't know how much of an impact it really has, because we haven't been processing citizenship applications anyway, or green card applications anyway, because everything is sort of shut down. But it's what it does to the psyche of people. The idea that we would somehow use this as an opportunity to kind of imply that immigrants are the problem here. Now, you'll note that in his order, he actually excludes people who are working in healthcare systems, or people who are working in the fields. And so it's such a perverse hypocrisy to say that there's an essential worker who is picking your food, or, giving healthcare on the front lines, who is immigrant. And number one, they don't get any of the relief that we've passed. They don't have any access to that. And number two, that we're somehow going to vilify immigrants when they're the ones that are among those saving the country. Sheroes and heroes out there on the front lines so that you and I can stay home. So it's just, it's another one of these, this is Donald Trump at his worst. He's not able to get attention. His ratings are tanking. So let's throw immigrants into the lion cage and see if we can generate some red meat for the base. That's all it is.
Yeah.
It's terrifying when you think about it, but yeah.
It is. And I'll tell you something else that's terrifying. If, let's say, I've always said progressives have this problem of of wanting people not only to agree with us on the end result, but also on steps 1 to 10 of how we get there. for me, I don't really, if somebody agrees with me on the end result, it's okay if they have different values than me. So I personally believe it's a moral imperative for us to provide testing, treatment, precautions to every frontline worker, regardless of citizenship, and provide relief to everybody, regardless of citizenship. But let's say you didn't agree with me. Let's say that that's not a moral value for you. Even then, think about your own health. If you allow the virus to proliferate out there in any community, it does not discriminate based on citizenship. And if you have people who are infected out there, then they will infect you and your family. And so it is in our interest, just from a public health perspective or from a selfish personal safety perspective, to ensure that every immigrant who is out there, regardless of citizenship, is able to get the testing, the treatment, the safety precautions that they need and able to access the relief so that they stay home if they have symptoms and that, or, if they're feeling sick, and that they don't go out and work. So I think whether you agree with the moral perspective that I think we probably all share, there's a public health selfish perspective that should get you to the same place at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Thank you. I'm going to move on to our first audience question. This is from Joe Donato, who's a data analyst from Huntsville, Alabama. He's really active in politics and volunteered on Bernie's campaign for years. And in his own words, he said he's heartbroken and is kind of abandoned all hope of reforming the Democratic Party since 2015. And his question to you is, can you point to any substantive policy changes that demonstrate the progressive takeover of the Democratic Party? And what gives you hope that your party, that the Democratic Party really cares about the millions of people who are working, poor, and marginalized?
Yeah. Thanks, Joe, and thanks for the support. As Joe may know, I was the National Health Policy Chair for Bernie. I was out campaigning fiercely by his side and on the campaign trail, and I'm in very close touch with him now. So I think that I am a hopist, and that is different than an optimist. Desmond Tutu describes it as optimism and pessimism are temporal. They are ephemeral. They change from day to day. Hope is an unshakable faith that is in your belly and not just your head. At the same time, I'm an organizer, and I believe that no change happens without street heat and organizing in the streets. And what has changed since Bernie's first presidential campaign in 2016 to now, Medicare for all is a mainstream idea. There was a poll out just last week that said that 90% of Democrats now support Medicare for all. My bill in the House has had 4 hearings for the first time ever. College for all. Joe Biden has embraced, not canceling all college debt, but free college for folks up to $125,000. That was Bernie's and my bill in the last session. We reintroduced it, and we also have a cancel all college debt proposal as well. So these are tangible things, but I think that we have to understand as a progressive party that we don't have the luxury that lots of other countries have of multiple party system, and so we're stuck with 2 parties, and you can't really win if you try to run a third party at this moment. We're trying to figure out what the ways are to do that, but so that means that you have to have outside street heat organizing and you have to have inside organizing. And the inside organizing has to be smart and strategic. You can't just blow things up all the time. You have to build an infrastructure. And that's what I'm trying to do as co-chair of the Progressive Caucus, through helping to establish the Congressional Progressive Caucus Center, which is both a 501c3 and a C4, pushing back on the lobbyists and continuing to refuse to allow people to extinguish the hope from us. And, I would just say to Joe, have that unshakable faith, be a hopist, because what will give victory to those who want to take the country in a completely wrong direction is for all of us to lose hope. That is exactly what they want to have happen. So let's not allow that. Let's push the boulders up the mountains. We know how to do that. And that's what every great change in this country has ever required.
That was amazing.
Love that.
Our other listener, Christopher Burt, he is a travel guide and a professional actor who is in such films as The Bodyguard and Crimson Tide. I personally want to brag about that. So he lives in the Los Angeles area. He asks, as a civil rights activist and a person of color, what has been your personal experience with race, and how has that changed since going to D.C.? Also, what are your views on the status of race as it pertains to the election this November?
Oh, wow. Christopher, we need to have a whole nother podcast on that topic.
Yeah.
But I do have a book coming out. I'll take this as a
Please, yes.
My book. It's called Use the Power You Have, A Brown Woman's Guide to Politics and Political Change. You can order it online from your best independent bookseller now. It'll be out in June. And it is actually a lot about that. It's about what it means to be one of only 79 women of color that have ever in the history of the United States been elected to Congress. And the challenges that poses, as an immigrant coming to this country at 16 by myself. And then, to quote Lin-Manuel Miranda and Hamilton, immigrants, we get the job done. We just have to. We don't have a lot of choices other than to work really hard, to be over-prepared, to make sure that nobody ever says we're not working hard enough or taking care of or contributing. And so I think that race in this country is still so poorly understood. It's we don't address racial inequity at all. I mean, the fact that from COVID-19, I bet a lot of people, maybe Christopher knows this, but a lot of people don't, that 33% of reported deaths due to COVID-19 are African Americans, who comprise only 14% of the population. If you look at low-wage workers and those who have filed for unemployment, the vast majority are women and folks of color, because those are the ones that can't do jobs that shelter in place and that are either unemployed or out on the front lines. And so I think we just have a lot of work to do to get people comfortable with talking about racial injustice, and to not take it as a personal affront when people say this is racist or that is racist, or this ignores racial equity. I think what happens is people have this immediate reaction of, oh my God, you're calling me a racist. Well, actually, probably a lot of us are racist and in different ways, because there are ways in which we've been socialized to think that intercede into every decision, whether you want it to or not. When a white person looks at a resume and they perceive that the person is black versus white, they might have the exact same resume. The black person does not get the interview. When you look at criminal justice statistics and incarceration, black and brown folks disproportionately affected. So we just have to be willing to question the way we've been raised and our own privileges, particularly as white folks, and not to try to get into a hierarchy of oppression. Low-wage white workers have terrible problems as well. It's not denying that. But if you layer on race and you layer on gender, you have a whole different set of issues. And the more we can just embrace that and say, you know what, I see that. And I get that I'm part of the problem, but I want to be part of the solution too. I think that would go a long way to being real about what racial inequity and injustice mean.
Great.
I wish we had so much more time with you. Do you have a few more minutes for David's rapid fire section? How are you doing with time?
Yes, I believe if I don't, then my office will text me right at this minute.
We'll
skip the first one, David. Skip the first one.
Okay, well, we had a joke question, so we're going to rule that out. I want to know, this is what I want to know. So we talked about Donald Trump. You've met Joe Biden, correct?
I have, yes.
Can you just give us a little feedback on him, because we don't know him?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? What kind of a person is he?
Yeah, I actually had a 50-minute conversation with him yesterday. He called me because I endorsed him this morning. And I wanted to be able to tell people why I was endorsing him beyond getting Donald Trump out. And what I will say about Joe Biden is he is one of the very rare politicians at that level that really does emote and display compassion because of everything he's gone through. And so I really do think that he gets what it means to be devastated, whether in work or in personal tragedies. He cares about working people. I really do believe that. And so that to me is incredibly important, a contrast in this moment of Donald Trump and his callousness and cruelty. I will also say that, nobody doubts my progressive bona fides, and Joe Biden knows what those are as well. And he told me yesterday, and I believe him, that he is open, that he understands. I said to him, we cannot have young people thinking that the things that they believe in, whether it's taking on the climate crisis, a Green New Deal, Medicare for all, that those things are unreasonable or unrational, or that somehow they need to lower their sights. And I said, the United States of America has never done anything because we lowered our expectations. It's always been because we outpaced what we thought, what people told us we could do. And he said, I agree with you. And I am open and I am listening, and I want your feedback and I want your help. And I understand why progressives are so important. So I will be by Joe Biden's side, making sure that Donald Trump is out of the White House. I'll also sometimes be behind him, pushing him to get to where I want, where we want as a movement, and sometimes maybe out front in places that Joe Biden doesn't feel like he can go, but we still need leadership. And so I think that that's the way to think about it. Sorry, was that supposed to be rapid fire?
No, that was perfect. Yeah, that was perfect. And I like what you said, because my biggest problem with politics is that people in their own party don't call out people in their own party. Right. And we need more of that. To have a better country, we need people to, like, if the Republicans would call out Donald Trump, we'd have a much better time right now.
Correct.
David,
so I love everything you said.
You should ask that first question, David. You should ask it.
All right, Nathan wants me to ask, should we drink disinfectant to get rid of coronavirus?
Do not drink disinfectant. Do not.
Are you sure?
Do
so
not.
Don't drink it. So you're saying don't.
I am shaking my head. Do not drink disinfectant. It will not cure the virus, and it will kill you.
This is leadership here, right here.
Yeah.
You've heard it first on our podcast.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I want to get to, okay, this is a question we fought over on the podcast. Will a $15 minimum wage just increase cost of living everywhere else and cancel out the income increase?
No. No, and Seattle is the perfect example of this. Now, I would say that in some cities, 15 isn't enough. We should really be talking about a living wage. But what happens is when you put money into the lowest wage workers, it goes right back into the economy. So it actually stimulates demand for the economy, which means that prices should not rise. They should help the economy to continue. Now, there are other factors that cause prices to rise. So rent goes up in Seattle, not because we raise the minimum wage, but because Amazon and other companies bring in workers for the headquarters level jobs, which pay a lot higher, which means that with a limited supply of housing, those folks are outbidding people that have less money and lower paying jobs. So there are lots of other reasons for that. But no, we should be, look, this is the fundamental thing. If you work 40 hours a week, you should be able to earn enough to put food on the table and a roof over your head and save a little bit and send your kids to college. You shouldn't have to work 3 and 4 jobs. It's just ludicrous.
It is.
We should value work, and we should pay for that work well, because no profit, no shareholder, no corporate CEO would make any money if there weren't workers powering the engines of corporations. And we just don't value workers in that way that we should.
True. That's 100% true. Okay, is there a finance?
All the conflict around that question within
we were pro minimum wage increase, and David would argue.
Yeah.
No, wait. That makes me sound really bad. I would say yes, we need an increase, but every time it's increased, the cost of living has gone up. There needs to be other actions around it.
Totally agree with you.
She agrees with me.
Okay,
she agrees with me.
So you've created more conflict now.
Great.
But I'll just give you an example. We need way more money into affordable housing.
Yes.
We need way more money into childcare. We need more investment into public transit. I mean, we have disinvested at the federal government over years, and this is the consequence of that. You know, we should think about these as investments. When people talk, okay, I'm going to definitely have to get off soon, but
sure.
When people say that, that somehow we can't have the deficit increase, it's not really about the deficit increasing. It's about what you spend money on. Does what you're spending money on increase and build the future? Is it an investment into the future? It's like if you want to send your kids to get a higher education, it costs money up front, but presumably it's an investment into the future because those kids are going to be able to get better jobs and earn better, money or follow their hearts or whatever it is that is going to be helpful to the country. And that's how we should think about it. Putting $2 trillion into tax breaks for the wealthiest and allowing corporations to spend 80% of it on stock buybacks doesn't do anything for working people across the country. Whereas canceling student debt does, raising the minimum wage does, increasing affordable housing does. Those are real investments in the future.
Great.
David, do you want to ask that last question really fast? This is an easy one.
So easy.
Okay. Oh, God, you got to go soon because I have two really good questions. But I'm going to ask the last one, the most important question one, and then if you have time, I'll ask the other one. Nathan and Erin are getting a new kitten, a beautiful new boy kitten. Do you have a suggestion for the name? I have to think about that. When we named Otis, Steve, Nathan's uncle, came out with the most ludicrous brainstorming of names, things like Tweezer and Scissors, and just look around and select some random name. So I'm very careful with my naming. And so I would like the opportunity to think about my nephew and my niece's new kitten's name and to provide thoughtful feedback.
We'll send you a photo.
Anytime you do, tweet it, text it to them. My last question is really important. Is there anything you have wanted to say that you haven't been able to say, or any question you've wanted to ask that you haven't been able to answer anywhere? Because you have a forum now that you can say anything you want.
Yeah, I guess the thing I would say just quickly, maybe to end this, is that I really do have an incredible amount of faith in the heart of people everywhere. And I think that is, it is just something that is true, that most people want the same things for themselves and for their families. And so I would just call on people as we physically distance to make sure that we emotionally closen, that we see this as an opportunity for recognizing how deeply interconnected we all are, and that we continue to have faith in ourselves and faith in our future that can be shaped by our hands. It's these hands. I'm lifting up my hands for anybody who is listening. It's these hands that shape the future. All of us, if everybody put their hands up and thought about using their hands and their spirits and their hearts and their work to really define the future instead of just sitting back and saying, "Oh, I can't do anything about it," I think we would have a very different country. So stay engaged. And let your hearts speak to each other as much as your heads. But listen to the doctors and the public health and the scientists.
Exactly.
Thank you so much for your time. Thank you for staying overtime with us. We so appreciate that.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much. Thanks, and I hope you come on in the future because we need to find out how to maintain hope and how to have faith.
Absolutely. Thank you guys so much. And it was great to be with you. All right. Take care.
Bye.
Thank you. That was awesome. She was so much more amazing than I thought she was going to be. I really get that she cares. I really do.
Yeah.
Yes.
I feel like
I agree. And she's wicked smart.
I want to know her better because I want to figure out how to be that articulate and get my point across.
I know.
So she's so smooth the way she gets her point across. from the first
A lot of
question.
practice. She has a lot of practice, though. You know, she's doing this constantly. But yes,
But it's also, there's an innate thing in her that allows her to do that. But from the first question, I was going to be flippant and funny, and then I was like, oh, she schooled me on the first question. Because we don't realize how serious it is and what she's dealing with. And to have so much hope with what, even just in her first question, what she said, what she's dealing with.
Yeah.
It's amazing that she can go on and be as charming as she is.
she made me want to do more to shape the future.
That's what a good politician or a good leader should be. It should be someone that inspires and makes you want to do better and change the world for the better. So she's an incredible person. I had so many follow-up questions to everything, and
we've got to get her back on.
I'm watching the clock go down, so I know there was an audience question that we didn't get to, and I apologize. We will try to get her back in and try to get other guests too. I even skipped a couple of our really good questions.
I hope Joe finds some hope.
I hope so.
After her response, I thought she had a really great answer to his question.
I know she gave me hope. She made me feel better, and I really want to know. Oh,
did David Monster just say he has hope for humanity?
I didn't say hope for humanity. I said hope for some people.
I'm sorry. That is the most we've ever gotten from you.
Yeah.
I'm over the moon right now with excitement for what's going on.
Well, I realized one thing is that when someone has a good idea in government or good idea, someone has a good plan, they're only actually able to employ a couple of pieces of it, and then they're out. And then so someone else comes along and maybe denigrates those things and has their own. So we never have a solid plan ever in this country. It's always pieces, and then it's broken, and then there's more pieces, and it's piled on. So maybe if we had someone that had a plan and we employed it, maybe something positive would happen or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know.
So she's awesome. I really am a big fan of hers. That you guys must feel so lucky to be related to her.
Yeah, I guess there's the cat's out of the bag. There's a little nepotism why she came on our show. A lot of people are like, why would she come on the Friendcast?
It took a year though.
It did.
So even with nepotism, you have to wait.
Dude, she's awesome. I want her back on. We have so many questions to ask her. Go ahead, yeah.
I mean, it's been great, like especially her, but all of our last guests. We've just had such great guests recently that can't wait to have all of them back on.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you to everybody has been amazing. Yeah,
it's really helped having these conversations. I know for me has helped in this time when we're all stuck at home and feeling disconnected but connected. It's just kind of this weird mental space to be in, and having digging into these things and learning and getting different perspectives has really helped me. So hopefully it helped you guys and our listeners, and it's kind of the whole point of all this. So
absolutely,
totally. It's like Nathan said, I would love to get involved somehow.
Well, you can.
Yeah.
Oh.
Well, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can help shape the future. It doesn't necessarily have to be in politics, right? So
that's true. Oh, that's true. You're right.
But it's also meeting Pramila and getting to know her and talking with her. She's not the only one in government and politics that is like her. So there is hope. There are people that truly are coming from the right place and actually trying to make change. And even though they can't make big change fast, even little things, even those little seeds that Bernie Sanders planted that are now getting national recognition in a way they never did, those things, unfortunately, change is slow, but we have people out there that are fighting for it, and that we have to all maintain hope. She's right, and I feel hopeful. I feel more hopeful.
Yeah, me too.
And I'm proud of my American flag attire.
Totally. And I feel like the way to do it is we have to somehow include everybody, because we never do. It's always a fight one way or the other.
That's true.
And especially the Trump administration is showing it better than any, that they just are shutting out anything else. And the Clintons did that a little too when they were in. it needs to be more inclusionary, and people need to say like, hey, I don't agree with what you want, but we have to be able to include that in the American, program somehow. I don't know how that's going to happen, but I think that's the only way it is going to happen.
Right.
I think you're right, and I feel like we are in the worst of it right now, or the worst we've seen of the divisiveness. And it's been growing over time. We've earned this. It hasn't been just one person jumping in. We just had the king jump on top of it.
Thank you all so much for tuning in. That was such an incredible interview. Thank you so much to Pramila Jayapal and her team for allowing us that time with her. Please check out our Facebook page and let us know what you thought about today's episode. We will post the audio and the video of this as we've been doing for the last 4 weeks, so check it out. Please subscribe to us on iTunes and leave a review. That really helps us more than you know. And lastly, our Instagram page. I know this is a lot of plugging, but this is a big one. Tonight, live, we are going to be introducing our brand new kitten to the world, so you're not going to want to miss that. David, do you want to take us out of this?
Oh, sorry. Yes, in honor of the amazing interview and the gratitude we have for the person who we interviewed today, we're doing something different. We're simply ending by saying, wonderful, wonderful person.
I'm going to let that sink in.